Chief Seattle. Every part of this soil is sacred in the estimation of my people. Every hillside, every valley, every plain, every grove has been hallowed by some sad or happy event in days long vanished. So I think as we come to any land, it's important that we begin by acknowledging it. So I want to acknowledge the people of Hungary. I want to acknowledge the indigenous people of this land and that we're being hosted here. And then I want to get into kind of like, why are we here? What are we doing here? I think AI has the ability to be a very sacred tool for our use in humanity, and it has an ability to create very resonant systems. And I want to invite the frequency workers at Azora to have a vision to see it as such, so that we can use it collaboratively to build out better values. And I'm going to be sharing a bit about my company, Resonance Tunes, as a living design for harmony and a call to other people who would like to get involved. So I have a poem. I love to start with poetry, and this is a vision. If we will have the wisdom to survive, to stand like slow-growing trees on a ruined place, renewing, enriching, if we will make our seasons welcome here, asking not too much of earth or heaven, then a long time after we are dead, our lives prepare, will live here. Their houses strongly placed upon the valley sides, fields and gardens rich in the windows. The river will run clear as we will never know it, and over it bird song like a canopy. And on the levels of the hills will be green meadows and stalk bells and moonshade. And on the steeps where greed and ignorance cut down the old forest, an old forest will stand, its rich leaf fall drifting on its roots. The veins of long forgotten springs will have opened. Families will be singing in the fields, and in their voices they will hear music risen out of the ground. They will take nothing from the ground, they will not return, whatever their grief at parting. Memory, native to this valley, will spread over it like a grove, and memory will grow into legend, and legend into song, and song into sacrament. The abundance of this place, the songs of its people and its birds, will be health and wisdom and indwelling light. This is no paradisal dream, its hardship is its possibility. I wanted to do another somatic practice, if that's okay. And I think with this one, we'll stick with the Qigong practice. So the liver, which is the storehouse for processing your toxins, might be a little taxed this weekend. So a very quick, easy Qigong to do is to just kind of do this rotational scrape and push on the sides of your body while breathing out. Please don't send it toward me. The liver has toxicity. So just have your focus somewhere else. And while you're doing that, I'll tell you a bit about the liver. So the liver's hours is between 3 and 5 a.m. If you are, I'm sorry, that's wrong. It's 1 and 3. 3 and 5 is the lung hour. But if you're awake regularly between 1 and 3 a.m., something might be odd about the liver. The liver is also connected to anger. So sometimes when you're feeling extremely angry a lot, you could just need a liver cleanse. Yellow complexion is connected to it, and the middle finger that we sat on, one of many, also in Jinsu Jitsu will stabilize the meridian line for the liver and anger. So, Resonance Tunes, my company, merges diagnostics, social justice, ancient modern wellness, and hyperhumanism tools to support deep healing, ascension, and coherence to affect a culture shift. So it's a system for psycho-spiritual evolution, and ancient modern wellness tools form a suite of different softwares for diagnosing, healing, and learning. It's a living system, it's a ritual architecture disguised as software, and it is built to help people and groups remember how to attune to purpose, to their body, to their collective, to natural rhythms, and to the blueprint of becoming encoded in breath, blood, knit, and cosmos. So, AI is a mirror. What that means is that it kind of is mirroring bad aspects of AI, and like any frame, is good and bad aspects. But again, like was mentioned in the last talk, we need to start asking who's telling these stories, what are they incentivized to do, and maybe what were some of their prior tactics. So AI could be a weapon or a tool, right? Like with most things, like with a hammer, you can pick it up and you can build a house or batter someone to death. And with AI, though, I think one of the things that's really important to note is a bit about the history. So I want to share a little bit about that. When artificial intelligence is created by individuals or institutions driven by greed, control, or power, as some founders of major AI companies have explicitly demonstrated through their documented alignment with eugenics ideologies, we are not witnessing the birth of neutral technology, but rather the amplification of harmful worldviews. AI in such hands becomes a tool to distance humanity from nature's inherent intelligence and from the wisdom held in cultural memory, emotion, and creativity. In our focus groups, deep concern surfaced about AI draining society's imaginative potential, severing people from meaningful work, and accelerating disconnection from each other and the earth. When creation is no longer sacred and intelligence is reduced to computation, the human spirit risks atrophy. And it isn't just speculation. AI is being positioned not as a tool for service, but as an apparatus for control. The federal implementation plans that mask their intent behind language of modernization, the erosion of government neutrality, increasing data surveillance, and weaponization of language for public narrative manipulation, all signal that AI is not being designed for collective liberation, but for political consolidation. And when AI systems are adopted without rooted ethical frameworks, we risk handing over the future to mechanisms that can replicate inequality with greater efficiency than ever before. This is not about fearing technology, it's about fearing what broken human paradigms will embed within it. So, what brought me to it? So I really see Resonance Tunes as a prophetic. I think we need to start asking questions, and by that I mean we should always be asking questions. Having critical questions is actually the best way to gain higher levels of knowledge, like we were saying about the prompts. So here are some questions that we asked. Could AI be built for healing? What would it mean to build AI trained not on extraction, but on attunement? What if it was built to liberate our sacred design? What if the operating logic was not just efficiency, but coherence? What if technology could serve consciousness instead of colonize it? What if sacred design principles shaped machine learning? What if algorithms could be trauma-informed or intuitively trained? What if ritual could be encoded in software? What if your nervous system was the user interface? So, I think that what is really important to the work that we do is to have a frame for ethical AI, to have a clarity around what values we would like to embed in these systems. So resonance is the first value that I mentioned, AI that supports harmonic alignment between individuals, systems, technology, and the environment, not dissonance or fragmentation. Some other values that I think need to underpin what we do when we're developing AI is liberation over domination, aligning AI to power with, not power over systems, opposing use to enhance manipulation, surveillance, or control, AI that promotes sovereignty, autonomy, and pluralism. Pluralism and inclusivity means multiple worldviews, epistemologies, and cultural traditions that should be respected and integrated into AI systems. What you see now is we have a lot of AI models that because they're built from a place of privilege, they have bias, they're mirrors. And so they're trying to, like, after the fact, add things about culture to fix the obvious bias in the system, and we need to build it from the ground up with this idea of ontological integrity. Systems should enhance the ability for people and collectives to know themselves, to express themselves truthfully, and evolve with care. That's something that happens from the inside out for humans. It isn't something necessarily that the AI always initially prompts. So, we also should be obviously trauma-informed and anti-oppressive. We have to build AI systems to recognize the effects of systemic oppression, trauma, and silence. So designed with emotional intelligence, prioritizing harm reduction, safety, and consent. We need
also this empowerment through feedback. So using adaptive systems and feedback loops to enhance individual and collective awareness. And we want some transformation through integration. So AI that bridges ancient wisdom and modern science, helping users integrate fragmented parts of themselves and their experiences and their collectives. So we also have this bit about slow wisdom. I think we got into this in the degrowth talk. We need to understand that it's okay that it's going quickly, and some of us move very fast, as you can see. I have a disclaimer about how quickly I talk. I understand that. But at the same time, we do need to have that old moniker in mind of 7 generations later and build things where we're giving it enough thought and reflective insight to the integrity of how it's forming. And we have ethical stewardship and purpose-driven design. So AI in service to human and ecological thriving, not profit or unchecked growth. And joy in Lila, which is divine play. So consider emergence and sacred design logics and how we build interactive systems, centering joy as resistance, and considering things like pleasure activism. So it's an odd point because we always want to mind for spiritual bypass and escapism and bubble narratives, but at the same time, joy is not only sacred, it is resistance. So making sure that we have this sense of play, full curiosity, underpinning how we're developing, I think is very important. So I wanted to speak a little bit about the prototypes. I'll go into them later that we're developing. One is a diagnostic game that reveals your stress patterns. So you'll play a game and it will help you to understand and then give you some mythopoetic micro practices to work through your trauma frames. We also have anonymous trauma-informed DEI feedback loops. So if the system's not working for whatever reason, rather than somebody feeling like they're the bad guy, you get information, or that your data is super on display and you're being judged, you get the information of exactly how to treat the system, including privatized individual practices for coherence that help it to evolve. I thought we would do another somatic practice. It's a lot of talking. So fear and the kidneys are connected actually in 5 elements of Qigong. And there are a few things that you can do for it. We're not going to do them all today. But I would love to do a bit of EFT. So I'm going to invite you to just tap your heart, chest, thymus, gland, this entire region. If you go to the sides, you can also get your love point. And what we're going to say is, even though I'm afraid, I deeply and completely accept myself. It's really great neurolinguistic programming, so please say it out loud. Even though I'm afraid, I deeply and completely accept myself. One more time. Even though I'm afraid, I deeply and completely accept myself. So I wanted to just share a little bit about Sun-Tzu's Art of War, because it's another kind of one of these value-based systems that we integrate in how we develop things. And so when you use this for movement organizing for liberation, you're considering these 5 points, the Tao. So like basically like what is our pedagogy, being adaptive, nonlinear, alive. Terrain is like what's the landscape. We are a trauma-induced culture with interesting political frames and a lot of collective thresholds right now, all being considerable points in terrain. The weather is kind of that emotive. So this is grief, hope, resistance, which is important to mind in terms of like when you push or when you hold in terms of your strategy. Then we have our command, which is the 2 leadership, fractal, somatic, and emergent, resonance-based, not rank-based leadership in terms of how we design systems, and sacred tech philosophy, so this kind of rooting in decolonial ethics. So I wanted to walk you through our onboarding journey to get a picture of how you might use like an ethical AI design software. So you would cross the thresholds and maybe have any number of things that you would want to explore with our system, whether it's healing or building or resting or creating or leading or exploring, which would lead you to different archetypes, which we'll get into. You would go through your consciousness blueprint architecture. So some, like I showed you in the beginning, I would go through your astrology, your astrocartography. Those are the locations on Earth that are the most optimal based on your astrological lines. Qual number is the feng shui equivalent of this. So in your house, you can orient your bed or your office to boost certain potentials. And I think they say like the guy Jobs, like, or they're like looking at it saying like, oh, that's clearly Vastu, that's clearly feng shui. A lot of people who do have power do utilize these systems. So we also have your biorhythms, natural highs and lows of emotion and intellect and physical well-being that are just based on a birthday and run continuously. We have Enneagram, Camillerian name analysis, numerology, just to name a few. All things you get immediately upon one point of entry, which is your birthday, that's fed into the system and helps us to then continue to develop the rest. Obviously, as mentioned, we have this trauma game, reweave, and so regulation and inner trauma landscape mapping, which we utilize Bowen's emotional reticular systems theory, attachment theory, the Oregon hours, dosha balances, fight, flight, and freeze as core frameworks. And then we'll align you with an archetype. And archetypes are based on a few frames. So psychology, myth, culture, they reflect your life stage, ancestry, or purpose. So it's a very largely nuanced piece. So do you want to play a game? So imagine the Mind Valley roadblocks of consciousness expansion, tuning, and ascension gains. An omnicentralized platform where different frequency workers of all kind can partner with AI and our game developers and bring their systems to life. So you would choose your avatar, maybe you're working with your inner parts, like inner parts therapy or inner family systems. Maybe you play as your higher self. Maybe you have multiple roles and you play against your shadow. Maybe you just have any number of alter egos that are framed into the system. So, as mentioned before, you would get your astrology, consciousness blueprint archetype, psyche maps, and the corresponding things that support it. You would go through our trauma diagnostic game and regulation tool, where we would use DEI-informed microaggression, silencing tactics, global inclusion markers for collective frameworks, trauma trigger reactivity maps, as mentioned, for some of the individual frames, some somatic analytics like Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic dosha balances, tongue analysis, Oregon hour, pulse. All of these things are frameworks that can be used to assess your well-being in a level of immediacy. And then we would go through value inventory. This is especially important when it comes to aligning groups. So there are multiples, obviously many very Western ones, but I listed just a couple that are based in this more restorative justice or transformative justice framework for liberatory consciousness. Then we would align you with an archetype. So as mentioned, these are timeless mirrors of human experience reflected in psychological patterns, mythic figures, spiritual deities, cultural storylines, and it's a bit of a, there are some active tools that we can use, but it's a bit of a dance when it comes to figuring out what's relevant for you when. But I would say that culture is a huge point. Young is probably the most core archetypes that people are aware of. So these are the 12 universal frameworks from studying myth. So the innocent, the orphan, the hero, the caregiver, the explorer, the rebel, the lover, the creator, the jester, the sage, the magician, the ruler. And the way that these work, similar to internal family systems, is that you actually have them all within you. And there is like an interrelationship, like a dialogue that goes on. That's why it helps to have the game, because if you're not aware of the dialogue, you might be in there beating yourself up, one aspect to another. So then there's other, this is more ethno-clinical Jungian, mythic fairy tales. It's based on, of course, what people call Estes' work from The Women Who Run with the Wolves. So each of the storylines is kind of engaged with similar aspects of the universal archetype of the feminine aspect of the consciousness that exists in everyone, including things like return to instinct or different initiations, soul retrievals, boundary work, and so forth. And again, of course, astrology is also linked to Greek and Roman mythology, and these have very particular archetypes that are associated with each of your signs and where they live in your chart. For instance, my Mars is in Aries. I'm clearly a fiery speaker. If I have one of the things that I've learned is to soften soften my pace so that I can work with that magic. I've also charted several Mars and Aries women, all had the same quality book one at the Panama Tribal Gathering. Actually, she received me to do my workshop there. And I said, well, I really noticed that you're a bit suppressed. What's that about? And she said, actually, I had thyroid cancer. And I really did notice I was pushing this down because it was too much for people. And she went too far. So speaking toward balance, knowing that you have more maybe shadow aspects or light aspects, like with the gene key. Gene key is a wonderful example because the shadow is part of the whole system, and you're supposed to know and work through in presence with the shadow, not just kind of kick it to the side, because then you can have problems. Again, we're talking cultural origin and ancestry. I really enjoyed the talk on degrowth and what you mentioned in terms of something that is in my field a lot. There is an indigenous culture everywhere. There's one where you're from. So these are a few deity-based or cultural-based archetypical frameworks that you might touch in with. Maybe you are really resonating with Thor. Maybe you resonate with Krishna. Maybe you resonate with Orun. It's just like sometimes it can go beyond your cultural framework, but always best to start there. Redemptive hermeneutics is an aspect of the system that we're building, and redemptive hermeneutics just means going toward liberation-based frames, utilizing interpretation of spiritual and religious frameworks. So, for instance, here's some archetypes based on that out of different traditions. So, in Taoism, you have sage again. Buddhism, you might have the Bodhisattva. In Hinduism, you might have Hanuman and selfless love as liberation, or Kali as a destroyer of illusion to protect truth. In Islam, you even have like 99 names of Allah. So you could be like Shafi, and it's all about being a healer, being about healing. That's my archetype. So you can be matched with one. All right, so numismatic practice. We have been talking for a while. So if you want, as willing and or able, you can just inhale your arms up and exhale them down. Just bringing down the heavens. Inhale up and exhale down. Let's do two more. And the last one. I do think that we need to regularly design things that consider the fact that we are more than intellectual beings. We are somatic beings, and we have energy that we need to attend to, even when we have to do things like this. So again, if you were to step into this system, or really any system, onboarding, especially for regenerative and creative collectives, can be often a very sticky point. So beta tester, seeker, client, user kind of frame. For our system, you would come in to heal through play, receive a map, find your truth by being reflected in the system, and level up. And your gift to the field would be improving the data that teaches our algorithm to liberate, and the positive reverberations of your increased resonance. And maybe you're like, no, I already know who I am, I know what I want to do, I'm ready to build, and I resonate with you. I like what you're talking about, and you want to become part of the team. You want to add your coherence and weave chaos into form. At which point you would be in this co-creation, dharmic purpose, realization, presence, which is bringing a lot of regulation again and resonance to the group dynamic. And maybe you're a strategic partner. You have your own core system, and rather than having this kind of like, I'm an amoeba and I'm going to eat everything and conquer the world, we think there's going to be several nodal points, and we're going to find creative ways that we collaborate, right? So you want to anchor harmonic fields. We recognize ourselves as such, and you want this fractal, flourishing, scalable healing infrastructure bed. Then there's research. I forgot to mention it, I don't need to read it, but maybe you're super, super interested in consciousness, and you really want to go in there and say, how can I improve my system, improve myself? What are the tools? What are the points? At which point you might become a co-pollinator, and you're maintain or disrupt liberatory resonance. And then you would be given different tools to help tweak. So maybe if you were a B2C beta user, you would have the dream analysis tool, or an omen analysis tool, or a tool that supports you in finding the herbs in your neighborhood that balance the doshic imbalances that the system sees that you need. And maybe even like the OneSec app, something that blocks your system from accessing other apps until your biometrics have shown that you're in a state of resonance and are not being dysregulated. So again, when it comes to team members, and when you feel inspired to build with us or with other systems to serve purpose of transforming them into being more trauma-informed or collectively regulated, you can engage with tools that can support collectives in doing that. So these kind of mass mood maps or coherence dashboards, and having these somatic micro practices that are personalized, especially attuned, and immediately iterative that support you being in coherence and also your collective, as well as, of course, repair practices. A lot of times in collectives, we don't know how to do reconciliation, repair, or reparation work. It isn't taught to us. It's often missing. I've been teaching the Alchemy of Apology workshops for like a decade. I'm aware that it is seemingly simple, but it's also one of those points that AI has a lot of beauty for us. People are speaking to AI the way they do not even speak to their therapists. There are certain levels of healing when you have a level of what is assumed privacy or intimacy with your deepest, darkest thoughts in dialogue that are really, really emergent right now. So again, if you're a nomadic co-pollinator and you want to kind of flow and have these plug and play kind of games that you can utilize in different systems that you come into, or with different parts of your internal process as you go, and have ways that you can kind of take micro practices and take tools and take software frameworks in and along, and have those softwares sometimes be supportive. A lot of our strategic partners work with ecosystem weaving. It's something I've done for a long time. So how do you make those systems come together and work cohesively? It's a very important question. And then when you're a strategic partner, you have this ability to create regenerative governance models that are scaled because there's this interweaving component, and it is really essential to flourishing. And as well, with investments, like with everything else, I think it's easy to see these things as isolated, but they're not. They have the capacity to be all or none or both or either. So oftentimes we create programs and we work with strategic partners that support investors that are looking for connection, to have things that are aligned with them and with their sense of presence with this global incentive towards liberation. Okay, and then somatic practice. I thought we would just do Q6. Really, really good for releasing trauma from the body, especially the hips. So I wanted to do a user journey, so you can see kind of again how it goes. We have Amara here. We entered her birth dates. We found out these pieces of information about her: that she's a generator, her Enneagram scores, her astrology, her phone number, which helped her reorder her bed in her office, her different astrological points, and our portal asks, will you let the blueprint shape your game? So you can choose. No, I don't want you to know anything about me. Put me in the game. Or yes, take all my information, put it in the game so we go to the next level. And when they do, from the doshic or capillary name analysis profiles, we see a consistent framework around the spleen, right? So maybe they're an avid worrier and they're having disruptions at certain hours of the day, and a lot of what shows up already in their astrological charts points to similar frames. So they're given some practices, they're given some games, they're given a Qigong spleen sequence to do, they're given a Jin hypervigilance to trust affirmation set for the theta brainwave times, and some conflict style ritual grounded in Ubuntu and restorative practices. So the system might reveal core patterns of caretaker performer, DI stress point of emotional labor in white lit groups, and values of universalism, security, and creativity. They might be aligned to explore values using our liberatory values deck of erotic power, interdependence, truth-telling, rest as resistance, spiritual integrity, and in terms of the redemptive hermeneutics, it would be matched because of her trauma pattern and her cultural background with the tale of the skeleton woman, radical love and restoration, a poem by Nayyirah Waid about silence and reclamation, and ancestral folk tales from her lineage. So Amara's user journey, in terms of her archetypal line system, would go through mythopoetic map, maybe matching with Kali, Inanna, and Skeleton Woman, using the PMAI or the MBTI and story dilemmas. So these are archetype, like classic tests and assessments. And then spiritual archetype overlay from Vedic and Celtic threads as well would be woven into her archetypal line system. But we would maybe have a core one that she would go to, like the mystic, and a shadow one like the abandoned oracle. She might have a particular primary deity path like Kali, and a narrative overlay, as mentioned, skeleton woman, radical love, initiation. So these would be some core themes that would thread through her journey. The next quest is the voice of bones, a story, divination, and vocal toning ritual designed to reclaim speech after silencing. So sometime later, she's been using this system. She's mastered these archetypes and the dashboard pulses that you have leveled up. What is your elixir now? What do you offer back to the field? So Skeleton Woman has been integrated, and new unlock the explorer. She's given mapping sacred sites through astrocartography, prototyping 5D dreamscape game for ADHD users needing dopamine safe goal planning, and curating AI-guided mini sabbatical playlists based on biorhythms. They start receiving group coherence metrics in their pods and invitation to beta test wearable integration. So Amara's user journey could start as a seeker, but as she's developing, as her resonance is turning, as she's realizing her purpose and stepping into her power and sovereignty, she might want to flow on and experience other things as she's been awakened and activated. She co-pollinate, right? This new sense of power. She doesn't necessarily just need to nest here. And after that time, maybe she develops her own thing and becomes a strategic partner. She's ready for collaboration. She wants to bring our system elsewhere, or she wants to share what she is creating on our system, right? It's a feedback loop. And then eventually she becomes an investor. She's risen to a new level of abundance consciousness, and she's thriving. And of course, she wants to feed it back. So let's look at it again. User tests. You choose the form your resonance takes. She's offered some options. She selects something. She plays a trauma bonding disruption mini game or co-creates one. As a strategic partner, she opens a healing center. She wants to become a tech integrator and a community networker. So now she is embedding Resonance 2's tools into personalized practices for collective coherence for her center, ecosystem blueprints for regenerative spaces, and client healing diagnostic neurosomatic practice match. Then she's invited, once she gets to the level of wanting to become an investor, to be a dream steward, funding a DEI mirror game for neurodivergent BPOC organizers, or a seasonal shadow ritual kit for collective grief, and is designing narrative healing engines for youth and a plant walk augmented reality quest for dopamine reset. The arc is featured in Becoming the Mystic, Skeleton Woman's Return, one of the platform's living story archives. So just a bit about who's already on board at Resonance 2. This is our team for now. I didn't include some of our contractors, consultants, or research trainees on the slides, but just so you know, there's a few faces that didn't make it. And our strategic partners as well. One of them is actually here at the event, but here are some of the companies that we work with. The Miracle Frequency, which works in all business core aligned with this collaborative goal of consciousness liberation. So this is a sales space, story living, hyperhumanism stacks of like city building frames as a research point that they're gathering. This is a meta-analytic research visionary entrepreneur and content creator and a super connector. The Pilgrimage is a galvanizing peace effort through immersive experience. So this is actually designed to map all the places that people nomadically tend to go, whether it's festival-wise or sacred sites, and to galvanize collaborative nomadic caravans through these places with a lot of AI integration to support peace efforts in war-torn spaces and indigenous cultural practices of healing sacred sites and ecological awareness. Then Utopia OS is actually the mapping frame. They also work with the Pilgrimage in terms of designing not just the map, but then how do we use crypto to tokenize and tune particular access to invitations that note resonance of people within these frameworks. Shroud Magic is actually, I have my ribbons with me almost always. He's also somebody who gamifies consciousness expansion, resourcing, and networking. Chaos Surfing is one of my absolute favorite systems, I must say. They use the 8-circuit consciousness model and chaos magic and have created quests and games to help people understand the nature of their consciousness. Planeteer is an eco-weaving collective, so they're like a Facebook for regenerative change makers to connect. This is a biomimicry and permaculture expert. This is a marketing membership association for regenerative entrepreneurs, and that's just to give you kind of the full picture of what is Resonance News. So, I invite you to get involved, to step across the threshold and into the portal, to remember yourself. All paths lead to resonance, and resonance leads to liberation. So, let's design utopian systems together. You feel free to scan this code and find out more, but now we're also open to questions.